Anna Smith was born Nancy Ann Smith to Charles Smith and Ann Sherman on December 5, 1846. Anna and her brother Eugene were the oldest children of Charles and his only two children with Ann Sherman. When Anne died around 1850, Charles then married Charlotte Ann Dean on November 11, 1857. With Charlotte, Charles had three more children, Anna's siblings Jessie Lydia, Narcia, and John G. Anna began teaching at the age of 17 in a one-room schoolhouse 2 miles west of where she lived in Redford in the John Briggs District School. For the next 5 years, she taught in Livonia and Redford, and then moved to Northville with her father and stepmother and taught in Northville for the next 4 years. In 1873, Anna Smith accepted a position as the instructor of primary grades in Plymouth. The salary Anna Smith would receive from this teaching position would end up being $300. In a quote she gave to a local newspaper, Anna said she had never had less than 100 pupils in the room at one time, and at times she even had an assistant. At this time, it was common for teachers to never marry and instead live with families in the community. Anna Smith never married, and during the time she taught in Plymouth, she lived with only 3 families. She lived with Charles Frisbee, the former superintendent, and his family for 23 years. Then she lived with Mrs. Jenny Voorhees, whose son, Paul W. Voorhees, was her student, who then went on to be the Attorney General of Michigan. And for the last 20 years of her life, she lived with Mr. and Mrs. Draper on Church Street. Though it is not well known, Anna Smith lived with a 4th family when she stayed in Plymouth. That family was the McGraw family, and it is unknown how many years she lived with them. Miss Smith's absences were only due to illness. Through a duration of 2 years, she was only absent once because the superintendent called her and told her not to come to school due to the icy sidewalks. Some students who became prominent in the community other than Paul W. Voorhees were Edward Huff, the former president of the Daisy Air Rifle Factory, and George Springer, former Plymouth Chief of Police. Miss Smith said that her most pleasant memories of her teaching experience were those spent teaching nature studies of wild birds and flowers. The community and her students described her as pleasant, sunny, with kindness beaming from a face crowned with silvery hair. At the end of her 67-year career, she was a teacher for a total of 57 years and 10 years as the supervisor of the juvenile department of the library in Plymouth. She was getting ready for another day at the library like it was any other day, when she had a heart attack and died in the Draper home on January 19, 1932, at the age of 85.